Here is Ben Shapiro following the wonderful performance of his colleague and employee in saying, essentially, thank God things like the Holocaust happened. Otherwise, we may not be here. We're all better off because of the Holocaust happening, because, of course, we follow the Matt Walsh formula of how to determine if something's good or not. We may not be here but for the Holocaust, in which case it's necessarily not a bad thing. But here, Ben Shapiro, desperate to change the conversation from gun violence, discusses that surely if someone who identified as trans or non-binary has committed a mass shooting, then surely there is something wrong with all non-binary or trans people, as opposed to like when all the other shootings are done by people identify as men. I don't remember him saying there's a problem with all men.
Or a problem with all Ben Shapiro viewers. All Ben Shapiro viewers. What was the Quebec shooter, mosque shooter?
One guy.
Listed him in his writings as one of his influences. I mean, let's make that case then, Ben. But maybe I should wait to hear what he has to say on this front.
You have the entire media that has rallied around the idea that Tennessee Republicans are to blame. When a trans person shoots up a bunch of Christian school kids, Tennessee Republicans are to blame. So you have the Wall Street Journal with a piece titled "Tennessee Republicans Face Pressure After Nashville School Shooting." Well, it's the Republicans who are facing pressure, naturally. It's not Democrats. It's not people who promote a perverse ideology suggesting that boys can be girls. None of that. No. It's the Republicans, of course. Or perhaps it is the New York Times saying, after mass shootings, Republicans expand access to guns. Right, because, of course, the problem is the guns. It's not the problem of disturbed people, an increasing number of disturbed people, as we talked about yesterday.
You know what's amazing about this is that I know he's trying to be sarcastic, but it sounds so reasonable.
Yeah.
Like, oh, we know that the problem is with the guns and not with the specific individuals who have access to these guns. Because all of a sudden, somehow we as a country have just an enormous amount more of people with mental issues that cause them to shoot up a school as opposed to other countries. But the real difference, we all know, the real difference between our country and any other country is the enormous, it's not even access to guns. I mean, it's beyond access. The constant marketing and we are awash in guns in this country. But it's funny because his sarcasm doesn't track.
Yeah, more guns than people in the United States.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Is the New York Times saying, after mass shootings, Republicans expand access to guns. Right, because, of course, the problem is the guns. It's not the problem of disturbed people, an increasing number of disturbed people, as we talked about yesterday on the show. It's none of that. Now, the real problem is that there are too many guns, and Republicans are complicit in that. Or perhaps Maggie Haberman over at the New York Times reporting DeSantis to visit gun store on book tour days after Nashville shooting. Dems call it beyond the pale. It's now beyond the pale for you to even be in the remote proximity of guns because somebody got shot. That is the way that all of this works, according to the left. So you're allowed to take over government buildings. You're allowed to do whatever you want. You're on the left, after all. And Republicans are the ones who are truly to blame. Meanwhile, in the second kind of line of narrative here is even more perverse than the gun control line of narrative. The gun control narrative is ridiculous in the sense that this person legally obtained the guns. I'm unaware what law would be passed that would have prevented this person from obtaining the guns. I'm perfectly fine with banning
wait a
people
second. This honestly is one of the laziest things I've seen him do in a long time. He's reading off things like Republicans are pressured to buy Democrats to have gun reforms. It's just simply a fact. Maggie Haberman daring to report that DeSantis goes to a gun shop 2 days after a mass shooting. Well, why is DeSantis going to a gun shop 2 days after a mass shooting? He's going for a specific political reason. He is trying to show his overwhelming support in the wake of a mass shooting for guns. I mean, why isn't Ben Shapiro embracing this?
Yeah.
Why isn't he saying, like, how dare they report this? DeSantis, the reason why Maggie Haberman is reporting it is because of all the press releases that DeSantis's people put out for him going to a gun store.
Yeah, they're not putting out press releases for him going to CVS. So, like, I mean, they're doing that on purpose.
Bummed out. Somebody would get fired if they didn't report that he was going to a gun store 2 days after a mass shooting, because that's exactly what his campaign wants. And then Shapiro's crying about this. This is one of the most laziest things in the world. And they're like, well, she got the gun. The shooter got the gun legally. What laws would make it illegal for them to get the gun? Well, you change the law. Don't allow them to get the gun legally. That's the law that would change it.
Wow.
Really.
But he makes that
spring break. I get it.
Yeah. But doesn't he
get
make
it.
this
I'm
case
still
here?
half tricked out myself, but please do a little bit of work. Go back.
Yeah.
Ridiculous in the sense that this person legally obtained the guns. I'm unaware what law would be passed that would have prevented this person from obtaining the guns. I'm perfectly fine with banning people who suffer from gender dysphoria from purchasing weapons. That seems to me a pretty significant symptom of an underlying mental malaise that could theoretically be a problem in terms of owning firearms. But I don't think the left believes the same thing. But that takes us to our second narrative. The second narrative is that the true victims, the real reason this happened, the real reason a trans man shot up a bunch of Christian school kids is because right-wingers are intolerant bigots. And so the real victim here is not the Christian school kids who got murdered. Those are not the Christian school teachers who got murdered. Those, the administrators. No, none of those people are the real victims. The real victim is the shooter and people like the shooter. That is the narrative the media are drawing today. And it's vile. I mean, I'm not sure that I've ever seen the media turn this much in favor of sympathetic stories about a shooter this quick.
I mean, if they genuinely believed that these kids were the true victims, why not advocate for any way to avoid these people being victims in the future? Mm-hmm. And if he is genuinely in favor of preventing people with gender dysphoria from purchasing guns, what about all the other people who have killed other people with guns and killed themselves with guns?
Yeah.
How about we make it that anybody who has ever expressed any sadness can't get guns? And then, of course, we do know also that people get too excited with guns and shoot it off at like a celebration and end up accidentally shooting somebody. Or when they go hunting, they shoot somebody in the face or something to that effect.
Or get in a bar
anybody
fight
who expresses,
when they've been drinking.
Yeah, anybody who expresses any type of joy or sadness, you can't get guns.
That works.
Or we could also add to the mix people who are just seemingly don't express sadness or joy, because that's weird. And I would be concerned about them. How about we pass a law that says you can't get guns illegally? I know that we can't do that because of the Supreme Court. Why don't we try? Why don't we keep trying and trying and trying until there is the American public understands the reason why we can't get gun laws now is because of the Supreme Court, and let them respond to the extent that they can from there. But I mean, lazy stuff.
Yeah. See, he's really been phoning it in recently. Let's just unpack this really quickly, if you don't mind, Sam, for a second.
Of course.
Because, first of all, I've heard from conservatives in every other mass shooting scenario that red flag laws are unconstitutional because everybody has the right to a gun. Well, he's literally saying red flag laws for people who are transgender or non-binary. So the hypocrisy of that is brazen. But this is the limits of using that hypocrisy against them, right? Because Tucker Carlson, he's open about this too. I mean, I think he said something similar on his program. But for Ben Shapiro is supposed to be the cool kid's philosopher, and he has, an understanding of that, the fact that that's a hypocritical stance. The problem is that they don't care. This is what fascists want to do. They want to limit rights for certain groups of people and make sure that their guys are armed all over the place, armed as armed as they possibly can be. And if trans people, people on the left choose to kind of engage as a defensive mechanism to buy their own weapons. I'm not even advocating for that because I want to limit the sale and manufacturing of these weapons significantly. Then they go after them because they don't believe in rights. It's rights for them. They are the party of the white men, that they're okay with doing these mass shootings if they're inspired by Ben Shapiro as well, or other right-wing influencers, because that's their people and they're there to preserve the rights for their people. And they've been greasing the wheels on this narrative about trans people being mentally unstable for months at this point. Candace Owens, his employee, was spreading a conspiracy theory about the Uvalde shooter, saying that the Uvalde shooter was trans. That was false, but she kept saying it. Of course, never really seemed to correct it in any way. But this is their opportunity to strike, and that's why they've been focusing also on mental health. Like, what mental health care actually would be in this country is a universal healthcare program where everyone has access to a counselor, and then would also include gender affirming care for trans people, which is mental health care. That's part of it as well. But they're not in favor of that. They just say it as a way to deflect and distract. And then the knock-on effect is building this narrative that trans people are unstable, not fit to be in society, and not fit to have the same rights that everyone else should have in their construction, which includes gun rights. And that's just fascist stuff. Like, this has happened in history where marginalized groups have been restricted from, I believe, weaponry in the past. So, like, I mean, good on Ben. Just he tries to frame himself as the reasonable conservative, but he is just as much of a fascist as the rest of them.